Our talk today, and welcome if you're joining us later on YouTube. Our talk today is sort of an in-house talk, but I think if somebody just drops into it, they can learn something from it, including I'm going to do a nice introduction to meditation to end the talk. But um, it's really about becoming an animator. What does that mean? Not necessarily a guy who's doing stuff for Disney or Japanese anime, but what is a heart-to-heart animator? Well, first of all, just real quickly, what is heart-to-heart? And we have sort of a short vision statement. They actually say it's just imagistic. We're a 21st century interspiritual community, which means we're not aligned to any, we're not Christian, we're not Buddhist, we're not, you know, any particular faith. We venerate and actually take our cues from a lot of spiritual traditions, but we're inspired by the motors are sort of contemplation and action. That's why we always have uh, a middle part doing just silent contemplation, and why we reach out into the world any way we can to help by way of action. But all of it is based on the trust of the healing energy of love. Love's the operative word. If you could get rid of the other 22 words in the vision statement, love is it's why I'm here. And it's the motivator. And in the last Dancing with Spirit, we talked about a definition of love, of spiritual love, of agape, as they call it in Greek. We talked about six other types of love from the Greeks. There's all kinds of love, including flirting with people. It's probably your lesser form of love, but it does have a little energy to it. But we talked about Scott Peck's definition of love as the willingness to extend yourself for the purpose of nurturing your own or another's spiritual growth. It's pretty precise. Now, Scott there was talking about this the spiritual love, unconditional love, which the Greeks called agape, which was the word in the New Testament when Jesus, whenever love's mentioned in there, because most of the Gospels were written in Greek originally. When he said love, they wrote agape. Yeah. And that's a kind of willingness to extend, because it's often you have to extend yourself out of your comfort zone to practice this kind of love. And the purpose is to nurture in this world if it needs anything, because we're not really, I'm speaking especially from my context living in the United States. The idea that we should be a nurturing culture has sort of faded pretty much. And we need to bring that back. Everybody needs to be nurtured in your original home by originally your mother. Everybody was nurtured by your mother for 8, 9 months, whatever. And then, our family nurturing it. So the reason we extend is to nurture our own or another's spiritual growth. And that really is what this group is about. And then finally, just a quote by St. John of the Cross, one of the great mystics, and he said, this is really so precise. Uh, you can hang your head on this in terms of making your way in the world. John of the Cross said, where there is no love, put love, and you will draw love out. And 6 years of meeting with folks from Heart to Heart and being part of this community, it's just proven that to be true. Where there is no love, put love, and you will draw love out. We sort of started as a shelter from the darkness of COVID and being disconnected. And I think John of the Cross is right. Just a little bit of intro of Heart to Heart, especially if you're just dropping out of nowhere wondering what this group is all about. And it's good to remind ourselves, in the end, it's about love. Now, the second part of the talk is really on becoming, what does it mean to become an animator? Anima, the word in Latin, meant soul or spirit or life force, anima. And Jung used anima and animus to talk about sort of different flavors of feminine or masculine uh, soul, spirit, life force. And that's interesting. But the basic root means soul, spirit, or life force, and it's linked to the word for breathing. I mean, there's nothing. We were born, and when we had took our first in breath, and we'll uh, will transition out of this incarnation on the out breath. Nobody dies on the in breath, you know. So in between that first in breath and that last out breath, you can call that alive, you know. So uh, it's to become an animator is somebody who's dealing with soul, spirit, life force. Okay, and just to remind of our history 6 years ago, more than 6 years ago, during the darkest part of COVID, um, Jill uh, uh, said, "We got to do something here for these people because we're all cut off. Why don't you teach?" And so we did. Not in the form we're working now, but we just launched into it. Jill had me walk the the Zoom plank, and I said, "All right, I didn't like the idea of being on, I thought it had to be personal, and this is can be transpersonal sometimes in this group, as you know. Uh, so Jill and I were sort of founding animators. I don't like neither one of us to think of ourselves as a leader here, and even more so now than in the beginning. Although, in the very beginning, I did all the talks. Joel helped out when I couldn't do it, but that was just the two of us. And now, yeah, it's grown to something really a beautiful community. But we're all called to be animators, and all of you. The reason we are what we are now is because each one of you that shows up animates this group, brings soul and spirit and life force into the group by your very presence. And really, that breaks down into three things normally for us. If you think about it, it's the first thing is listening with the ear of the heart, really listening, being present and listening with what I call the ear of the heart, what the Benedictine tradition uses, talks about listening with the ear of the heart. That's the whole ballgame. And, think of your time here over the years. Much of it has been spent in listening mode. And when you're really listening and present in the listening, that's animating the whole group, you say. What you're doing now, animating the whole group. A second way is to speak. Uh, uh, to speak in our community conversation. Sometimes the heart wants to, has something to say to the whole group. And so every time that you speak, some people speak more than other people, but every time that you speak in the community conversation, that's our third movement, it animates the group. Okay, and then a third thing is sort of to be a lead off kind of inspirational speaker. I'm doing that now. Uh, uh, thank goodness, though, I've had help over the years because I don't think I'd still be going if I had to give every inspirational talk 4 or 5 a month. I just would have been worn out by now. So I got some help along the way. And then to be an inspirational speaker, just roughly means you got a 20 or 25 minutes in the beginning to share something from your heart with the heart of the group. And sometimes I've thrown away the talk on the day and I didn't have any notes. I have some notes today, but sometimes just the heart. And we got a great example of that last week with George. He just sort of threw away a talk he'd been working on the day before and just came out from the heart, and it was exceptional. Now, one thing about giving an inspirational talk, I want to talk a little bit about this, is it's easier than you think. Uh, uh, there are really five things as I think back on these my own talks and the talks that you've given over the last 6 years. Uh, it's You don't have to do a great. It's not about being a teacher necessarily. I was born a teacher, and that's what I do. But not everybody is. But it's easier than you think because here are some aspects here. For one, it's just some aspect of your own spiritual journey. Last week, George just talked about what happened in the previous day, which was a big aspect of his spiritual journey. But that would be anything. When you got into the 12 step thing earlier in the year, somebody talked about using uh, plant medicine to affect his spiritual journey, things like that. That's always good. And you're just talking about your life, and you can talk from the heart. Uh, Another aspect that you could talk about is just a favorite spiritual practice or tradition that you wanted to share. Our last heart to heart, well, before George was Rebecca, and she talked about Hindu tradition, one of the many in Hinduism. So, a favorite spiritual practice or tradition. Uh, some talks have been about a spiritual, focus on a spiritual book or maybe a documentary, even an article or a work of art. We did something on Van Gogh one time. I did something on Van Gogh. So it could be something that it's always what something inspires you. The next Dancing with Spirit, I'm going to talk about entering a political season and using one particular book and the guidance I found because it's going to be a wild ride. In September, from September to November, it's going to be a kind of wild ride in this country, and it would be good to have some guidance. So I'm going to be leaning on a particular spiritual book there. Uh, and then just a particular type of spiritual practice, whether it's sitting, walking, chanting, praying, journaling, focusing. We're going to have a talk on focusing coming up. Yoga, which would bring in like Brahma. Julie's going to teach again on going to teach formally on Brahma coming up. Uh, Mindfulness. There's a lot of spiritual practices. Yeah, and so you could just pick one. Grief work. Okay, there's many, and just pick one and sort of drill down on it, open it up for us. And then finally, insights on or calls to social action, which is going to be really part of the September Dancing with Spirit, because at least for most of us that are in the USA, this is an election, cycle that we're going into, and it's going to be a wild, wild ride. So it would be helpful to get some insights on that. So it's easier than you think, and then anything else, just as long as it inspires you, uh, then it'll inspire the group. It just works that way. When you're talking from your heart, we'll all gain that inspiration. Now, the terrific news is our current number of inspirational speakers has grown from one moi to 19. 19 people have actually come out in the course of these years to speak, some repeatedly, more than once, some just once. But really, it's been all hands on deck, and it's really keeping my fire burning because I'm doing 2 or 3 talks a month instead of 4 or 5, and that's some help. I appreciate that. And so I just wanted to just sort of talk a little bit. This is a little bit about a whole lot about the structure of how we keep going. My tagline under that picture uh, of the community a couple of years ago in our first heart to heart, physical heart to heart here, which of course people couldn't come to because they live, Vivian lives in France, or Carmela's on an island off of Seattle, and so it was not possible. But it was great to have some, and we're going to do that every year or two. But if so I'm going to be sending out a list of kind of open dates uh, this week for October, November, and December, because there's 5 or 6 days that we need covered, and I'll certainly be sending it to the 19 people who are already on the list. But if you'd like to add your name, just drop me an email. It's looseleafhollow@gmail.com, and just put the word dates in the subject line. It doesn't mean you're signing up for one, but it means that, well, you're putting your name throwing your name into the hat more or less, and you could. All right, now I'll add you to the list and I'll mail it out to you as well. So yeah, a short talk today. See, this was just about at 20 minutes. And that's also one other thing. I do a 45-minute talk for Dancing with Spirit because that's our day retreat, but 20 to 25 minutes normally. Uh, and I wanted to do something short because I want to keep, as part of our talk today, I want to just do an introduction to our second part. We're segueing into the uh, silent part where we leave words behind. And so, and I want some people on YouTube, if they're popping in, to see how we do this. And Jill's going to end the talk when we're through with the invitation here. So, all right, let's see. I'm going to put up the icon that we use often by Sister Mary Southland, a Chicago sister who painted this, and I acquired the painting, and she's still alive. Still, she works at a retreat center. Oh, this is not the one I want, but that's good to see. Yeah, it is. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, Sister Mary is still working, giving retreats in the west side of Chicago, but we use this icon oftentimes, and I want to talk a little bit about it. Uh, they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. An icon, however, can ease you beyond words. You don't look at it, you sort of can gaze through it. So you gaze at icons. And really, when you go to an art museum, that's also the way, when I go to an art museum, that's the way I look at paintings. When I was living in Houston, when Vivienne was living in Houston, I used to go to the Houston Art Museum, and they had one Van Gogh, only one. It's a picture of rocks and trees, but many times I just sat there and they had benches there. I sat there and just gazed at that picture and just sort of went through that picture uh, into a kind of timeless space and infinite space. Yeah, so a picture is worth 1,000 words. Uh, an icon can ease you beyond words into a kind of eternal hot tub where you're in eternity, you're in infinity. And in this case, we're trying to ease into a kind of eternal hot tub of loving kindness. If you look at this picture, there's a journey there. You can see the left brain thinking mind is on the surface of things up at the top of the picture, and then there's a downward journey down actually into our own body, mind, heart, and soul, into a place that's warmer than where we started. And it's sort of the shape of icons, the traditional icons are sort of, this is called a mandorla, which looks like an egg shape. Of course, an egg holds a new creation, but it's also, you can imagine the shape of this is two hands uh, holding uh, holding you. Yeah. And then, of course, it's warmth and colorful and light there where it's sort of dark around out on the surface of things. So that's why we use the icon. The hero's journey is always takes you on a journey. And the journey for all of us is to go from thinking for a moment to awareness, from time to now. I'll keep the time here. Uh, you can just don't have to worry about time. You can slip into eternity for a bit, slip into the now. So a hero's journey always goes from awareness, from time, from thinking to awareness, from time to now, and from doing to being. Yeah, think of that kind of shift. I mean, my thinking mind is working because I'm using words, but bigger than that is the overall awareness. Awareness is infinite and eternal. This thinking mind will stop at a point. Hopefully not during this talk, but everybody's thinking mind is going to stop at a point, but then awareness goes on, And it will be now when you cross this threshold out of this incarnation to what's next. You know what the Buddhists call the bardo, the Tibetans call it bardo. But whatever it is, it'll be now. And and then also you won't be doing anything, you'll just being there. So we're practicing this threshold crossing now when we cross from thinking to awareness, from time to now, from doing to being. So not to put down thinking, time, and doing. They're all relatively important. I thought a lot about this. And you know, whenever you're using words, you know, it's kind of dance with thinking, mind, and awareness, because the part of our brain that has the words, you know, part of our left brain. My oldest sister is 89, Diane. She's with Jim's wife. Jim passed away last year, and she's her thinking mind is in the place that makes words is no longer operating. It's sort of tough, sort of tough. It could happen to any of us at any time, stroke, whatever. So thinking, time, and doing, I'm not putting them down. They are all relatively important for navigating time and space. Awareness, now, and being, however, are absolutely and eternally important. Let that sink in. Your awareness isn't going to end when you flatline. And it's all and it'll be now, and you'll be being there, but in a totally other mode. And learning to meditate helps you get ready for that, crossing that threshold, you see, because we're practicing. So awareness is deeper than you think. Awareness is deeper than you can think, because it's beyond thought entirely. Now that doesn't mean when we sit in just let ourselves ease into uh, awareness mode that the thoughts don't continue. They do, unless you're flatlined or unless you're lucky and see a little break in the cloud cover. Thoughts just keep going. But we're talking about thinking now. The thoughts are fine; they're not a problem. Just like the sky doesn't mind when clouds come across, or geese, or you know, whatever. The sky is fine with all that, and so you can be fine with the incessant flow of thoughts. uh, when you grab onto it and start thinking about them, that's what pulls you up out of um, awareness, and now you're just thinking. And so uh, when you realize that, when you notice that you're lost in thought, as I meditated this morning and I was thoroughly lost in thought. I wasn't. I was just out there. And then when I noticed that, I took a breath. I mean, awareness notices you're lost in thought. Thinking doesn't notice that because you're thinking, but awareness knows. So I just, first of all, I breathe in, and that's a kind of return. Because notice what you do when you breathe in. You know, the breath goes in and down deeply into your lungs. So you're going towards the center of your body. So that's why breathing is a nice way to uh, bring yourself from thinking, go a little deeper, because the breath goes deeper. So you return. On the out breath, you can relax. And you know, returning is about breathing. The out relaxing is about allowing yourself to just let go of the breath. So relaxing has a lot to do with just allowing yourself to relax. Yeah, when you feel threatened or afraid, it's hard to relax. But see, we're going into like a kind of, I call it a kind of a hot tub that you can whatever you see as relaxing. I'm not talking about physical hot tubs in this world, because sometimes they can be dangerous with infection or something. But we're talking about going and slipping into an eternal hot tub where you can return to it, slip, ease into it, and then you can allow yourself to just relax into it, and then finally rest in it. So return, relax, relax. That return, relax, and rest. That's sort of the three-part motion of coming back from thinking about everything. We got stuff to think about, but we're taking a break. We're taking a break from thinking. We're turning the blender off for 20 minutes, and then it'll operate better. You know, if you never turn an appliance off, it's going to burn out faster. Meditation is actually, it's better than Sudoku or working puzzles or anything else, because you're just really, if you learn how to do it, you just you're relaxing and resting the mind, the left brain, well, maybe it'll function better if it's all, again, think of an appliance. You run it 24 hours a day. Uh, it's going to wear out faster. So we're returning, relaxing, and resting. Okay. So whenever you notice, so we can go into meditation mode now and just sort of shut your eyes because it's good to shut your eyes at first. Even for Buddhists, they shut their eyes at first just to descend a little bit. Now you're in the body when you shut your eyes. I mean, your ears are hearing me talk, but you're not seeing the screen now. Nothing to hold you on the surface. So we're just going to shut our eyes and breathe. So let's take a few breaths, conscious breaths. We're always breathing, but breathing in through the nose and following the breath as it goes from your nose behind your throat down into your lungs and fills the lungs up. And then even your stomach starts popping out. The air is not going in there, but the movement of the lungs pops your belly out a little bit. It seems like you're breathing into your belly, but you're really just breathing into the lungs. But so you feel that. And then on the out breath, let it go out through your nose as well. And just as it came in, slowly and fully. And that out breath is a kind of relaxation. You're releasing the tension with every out breath. You're allowing yourself to relax. So let's do a couple breaths like that. Just breathing in and following the breath as it goes down into the center of your body and the lungs inflate and even your belly pops out a little bit. And then releasing the breath, relaxing the breath as you breathe out, and just even try to breathe out a little bit more than you normally do. Try to get all what the Hindus call your stale prana, your stale breath, because we don't normally don't breathe this deeply. And do a few of those breaths. Following the breath as it goes down, just like our icon. You're going down to something deeper. And then that's return. That brings us back from the world of thinking, world of being lost in thought for a moment. We're going to turn off that blender for a while. Don't need it during meditation. And then relaxing and allowing ourselves to relax more and more in the body as you breathe out. So return, relax, and finally, you can just rest in loving kindness. And just think of that sentence for a second. This is the kindness, most loving thing you can do for yourself is to meditate. And that kindness and that loving kindness will, pour out of you more to others. So I'm just going to repeat these three things just 3 times, and then we'll be in silence. Really simple. Return via breathing. Relax via allowing on the out breath. And then finally rest in loving kindness. Rest in loving kindness. Rest